Thank you and welcome to this afternoon's COVID-19 daily update. We have a few other issues to address today. I'm delighted to be joined by Secretary Jose Romero, Interim Secretary of the Department of Health, and then also today Secretary Mike Preston, Secretary of Commerce, and we'll be discussing some unemployment insurance, PUA, and some fraud issues as well before we go. And I also, before I start going through the numbers, I'm just reflecting on where we are with our schools opening. I want everybody to know that we're working hard on this every day, from discussions with the Department of Health and our preparations, but also with the Department of Education. And this morning I got to speak with school administrators, but also hearing from literally hundreds and hundreds of teachers out there, both supporting and excited about going back to the classroom. Others are nervous about that. And I look back and I am pleased that we did postpone school for 2 weeks. And the reason is it gives us an opportunity, we postponed the start date, and it gives us an opportunity to study what's happening in other states that have started earlier. It gives us an opportunity to learn from the experiences that we see in the sports world as well. It gives us an opportunity to better prepare in every respect. And so we're going to utilize this time effectively over the next 3 weeks, because we want everybody to be able to go back to in-classroom instruction in a safe way that best protects the students, gives them the opportunity to learn, as well as the teachers and the staff. That's our objective, and we're working on that, as I said, every day. In terms of our cases, yesterday we had 44,597 cases cumulative. Today we have an additional 784 cases, which for the astute observers, you know that that's 3 less than yesterday. And in terms of hospitalizations, we have an additional 13 that have been hospitalized, brings us to 526. We have an additional 15 Arkansans that have died from COVID-19. That brings us to 490. In terms of the top counties that have contributed to the 744 new cases, the top county is Pulaski County with 149 cases. And the next one is Sebastian County with 56. Now, I know there's a population variance or large density of population in Pulaski County, but that's a big gap between the number 1 and the number 2 county. Mississippi County at 55, Washington County at 45, Benton County at 35, Saline County at 25, Crittenden County with 24, and Jefferson County with 23. So once again, we see some of the top Northwest Arkansas counties contributing to that. The rest are scattered around the state, from Mississippi County down to Saline County, and of course the rest are fewer than 20. In terms of tests, we've done 5,840 tests over the last 24 hours. And let's go to the slides. And here you can see the pattern, the last 2 days being fairly flat. Obviously, the next one shows the rolling average, and the rolling average is down from our peak. We'll see where we go. We hope that mask mandate, the greater discipline of Arkansans of social distancing will continue to make a difference. The number of active cases is not at our peak again, but we saw that's about flat from yesterday. The number of currently hospitalized, you know, this is, as Dr. Romero will mention, both the deaths and the hospitalizations follow on an increase in cases. So this increase is reflecting the increase in cases from some time ago when we were at a higher level than we are now. We hope the fact that we've been flat for some time will reflect a decrease in that hospitalization over time, but we will see from that. But that's our hope. The positive test results, these are those that have submitted, and of course over 90% of those that go in for a test come out with a negative test. but our positive rate is 8.5% cumulative from the very beginning. And, you know, even though you see the last 24 hours with a lower, about a 5% positivity, we know that's going to go up as we have more test results that come in and from that same time period. But it has been the last couple days lower than the 10%. This is just the starting of the month, that our goal is 190,000 tests. We're at 18,000. And then if you'll go to where the contribution is, and I want to give accolades to our Department of Health team, led by Secretary Romero and our Chief of Staff, Stephanie Williams, that this shows that, which is the white line, the largest number of tests that's been done in 24 hours by our Department of Health team. And that just needs to be recognized, because that's going 24/7. They're working hard at that and seriously contributing to our ability to keep up with our testing. The commercial lab is about the same as it has been. If that kicks back up, then we're going to be meeting our goal without any difficulty. And then let me pause for a moment and switch gears before Dr. Romero comes. And I wanted to mention that when it comes to our pandemic unemployment assistance claims, and when it comes to our unemployment claims, we have some of those that are on hold because they've been identified as potential fraudulent claims. And Secretary Preston is working hard with his team to sort through those to get the legitimate claims paid, but to turn over the fraudulent claims to law enforcement and the FBI that has an ongoing investigation. And I want to alert everyone that anyone can receive in the mail that they've been approved for an unemployment claim or a pandemic unemployment assistance claim. And if you have been approved for one of those claims and you scratch your head and say, well, I never applied for one, that's a pretty good indication that somebody is trying to use your identity to accomplish fraudulent purposes. That happened to me. It can happen to anyone. And so I went back up to Rogers this weekend, and I have a notice of determination of entitlement under the CARES Act to a pandemic unemployment assistance payment that I have been approved for. Now, you wonder how that can happen. First of all, I did not apply for it. Secondly, I'm not entitled to it. And the scheme is most likely that if I would go ahead and sign off on this, then the check would be issued, but not to my bank account, but to the fraudster's bank account. And so they put my address, identification information in there, somebody else's bank account information, where they can funnel the money to them. Now, as I said, the FBI is investigating this, but as you get one of these, if anybody does, obviously, and we'll show that here, I believe that's the last slide, report the fraud to the internal audit at arkansas.gov, or you can call this number and file a police report and make sure that the system knows about your identity being used for a potential fraudulent purpose. So we're asking everybody's assistance, and I know Secretary Preston will have more to say about that. With that, Dr. Romero.
Thank you, Governor. So let me hone the numbers a little bit for you all. As mentioned previously, the new cases were 784. 774 of these came from the community, 10 cases from correctional institutions. Hospitalized individuals are 526, an increase of 13. Individuals on ventilators, this has a decrease by 7 and is down to 101. Total deaths, 490, an increase of 15. Total number of individuals recovered are at 38,000 individuals. This is an increase of 760. Our active cases are 6,891, 88 cases in the nursing home residents, 393 in correctional institutions, and 6,410 from community cases. As mentioned by the governor, our total number of cases now cumulatively has been 4,381. As for the testing, as mentioned, the labs performed 5,840. We've had a slight tick upwards in the percentage to 8.5. Let me thank the governor for thanking us, but I want to turn this over to the lab itself, to Dr. Seeley, the director of the laboratory, and the technicians that worked very, very hard to achieve this number. They're working 24/7 to get these numbers out. And then, as mentioned, the lab itself, your lab, your public health lab, performed 2,212 tests, followed by the commercial and private laboratories of 3,242, and UAMS with 386. Just two other comments before I leave the podium. It's very important for those individuals that are undergoing screening for COVID that they provide telephone numbers so that we can follow up on the results. We are doing analysis at this time to see what our times are on reporting and reaching these individuals. One of the biggest problems we have is not having adequate contact information for these individuals. So I want to stress that it's very important that you give that telephone number to us. We understand that there is concern about giving that information out to be scammed by somebody, but we are only using it for ourselves and for the CDC. Lastly, I also want to point out that for those individuals that are concerned enough to have COVID testing, please enter quarantine when you have that done. Do not wait for the test to come back. If you are concerned enough that you have COVID, then you need to go and isolate yourself until you are contacted by either electronic means or by a contact investigator. So I'll end here and turn it back over to the governor. Secretary of Press. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Dr. Romero. As the governor mentioned, with the unemployment insurance fraud and the PUA fraud, it can literally happen to anyone, as the governor learned this weekend as he received notification of the PUA claim that was filed in his name. We've additionally had several cabinet secretaries who've had it filed in their names as well, so I've received phone calls over the last few days as well indicating that a claim had been made. So I point all this out to say that in what we've learned in talking with our counterparts in other states, as well as our national association, and obviously in conversations with law enforcement, this is part of a national, even international ring that is trying to defraud the system. This goes back to breaches that have happened over the course of the last couple of decades from various sources, and where it is that information is fraudulently obtained and stored, and then at the opportune time like this one, those bad actors will then use this information to file claims, and hopefully that they can game the system because we do have so many claims coming in. So what does that mean for us that we are looking at as a team, that we're having to unfortunately flag more claims than we normally would to stop the fraud that's coming in? And just some rough numbers to look at right now, we have approximately 27,000 claims in our pandemic unemployment assistance that are on a hold or in a potential fraud status, and an additional 10,000 within our unemployment insurance that are in a fraud status. So we are trying to get through that backlog so that we can make the payments to those who are in need of that payment and who rightfully deserve that payment. But we have to do our due diligence because, one, we don't want to pay pay claims to those who are fraudsters who have claimed it. The other side is that if we pay that, when the federal government comes back and does an audit on the state and our unemployment system, all those fraudulent claims that we paid out, we'll have to then reimburse the federal government. So there's multiple reasons why we need to be very cautious and very careful in doing our due diligence to check and verify that we don't pay out those fraudulent claims. So our team has been working very hard to put together all of our resources on how we can address this. For those of you who are in a hold status in PUA, you should receive or have received a letter in the next couple of days telling you to how you can go ahead and verify. We're setting up verification stations around the state. Again, that information will be addressed regionally and given you on the certain days to come in. And we're actually partnering with other state agencies who are going to assist us and do some identification verification. So that letter will ask you to bring in the actual letter, your PUA claim, along with your identification. That way we have someone from the state who can lay eyes on that claim, on your ID, and make sure you are who you say you are and you are claiming that claim. Will be then able to unlock your account and make those payments happen. On the other side, if you are one that's, received a fraudulent claim, or you're an employer who you received a notification from DWS that your employee has notified of a claim, let us know immediately. And so we can not issue a payment to that, put a hold on the account, and let our fraud team investigate. And I'll refer back to how to report fraud. Honestly, the easiest way and quickest way is going to be through that email address that you see, adws.internalaudit@arkansas.gov. Send an email with your name, your information, just a little bit about the claim, and someone will reach out to you. You can call that number. Obviously, there's a high volume of calls right now. I would suggest leaving a message. That message then translates directly from a voicemail to an email. So our team is just opening those emails as they come in as voice messages. So if no one answers, please leave a message. It goes to our email system. That way we can follow up and answer those questions. You can also visit our website, and there's a form there that you can upload as well as another way to report those fraudulent claims. And again, this is for businesses who have received this information, for individuals who have received this information. And as the governor mentioned, please file a police report. Law enforcement is looking into this from multiple angles. We want to make sure that we're tracking this accurately. As you can see, it's a wide-scale issue for not only Arkansas, but across many states. We want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to combat fraud. On a good news side, I would say that we're seeing our continued claims down to about 90,000, which is at the lowest point it's been in some time. We peaked around early May at 122,000 continued claims. We are still seeing a high level of initial claims, somewhere between 10 to 15,000 each week, and part of that is because of these fraudulent claims that we're seeing. So the actual claims are not that high each new week. It's just because we're seeing such an uptick in fraud that is becoming an issue. So our team is working very diligently to make sure that happens, but we wanted to get this information out of how you report. Please report it so we can stop these payments and make sure we have that cleared up. And again, to those who are in that hold status that legitimately have a claim, please bear with us as we work through this. You should have received this letter or a letter very soon with the details on how to work through this, and we'll work with you very quickly to hopefully get that cleared up and your payments made and issued in the next couple of days. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mike. With that, we'll take any questions.
Do we know by chance how much has been paid out in fraud, or that has been, I don't know, you understand what I'm asking here?
I do understand what you're asking. I'm not sure we have a quantifiable number for that.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to this point tell you traditionally, Arkansas has actually been very good in terms of our fraud rating that the Department of Labor grades us on. We've done a good job in not paying out fraud. We're one of the lower states on that. We've always prided ourselves on that. Hopefully that can continue. But to date, I think we've, in terms of the pandemic unemployment assistance, we've paid out around a little over $500 million. The pandemic unemployment compensation is close to about $1 billion in paid out. So we've seen a lot of money move throughout our economy. We're hopeful that most of those are legitimate claims, and a lot of them probably are. Can I say that there's no fraud in there? I'm sure there's some. We just don't know at this point what that looks like.
About the unemployment claims, do you know out of these frozen accounts, how many have you unfrozen? After verifying the information, or?
I would have that number. Right now, there's 27,000 that are currently frozen. There are some that have been unfrozen that have been moved through. Our hope is that, as I said, with that letter that we've sent out to everyone, we're sending out to all 27,000 to try and verify. So over the course of the next couple of days, in the next week or two, we're going to send a letter to all those, and then we'll know for sure exactly how many of those were actually fraud, and then all those ones will be unfrozen, either or a permanent hold because we know it's a fraud and we're not going to further on, or we've received the information that we need on our end to do the due diligence to release payments. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have that 27,000 backlog completely cleared out.
It sounds like these have been frozen for a while, like a few weeks.
Some of them have, yes. So we've got a team internally that's working on those, but it's harder to verify without actually going in person to see them. That's why we're going to encourage everyone to come to these stations that we're going to set up around the state to have that. But how many have been released? I mean, I go back at the number. We're making out, like I said, $500 million in payments. So we are making payments. We're alleviating some that were in a potential fraud status. We're able to catch it on the PUA side a little bit easier because it's a newer system. So we can query our system to look for certain things. Unfortunately, like I said, sometimes they are legitimate claims that are getting held up, but in an abundance of caution that we don't want to pay out fraudulent claims, we're having to use that.
Do you know how many fraud reports you've received?
Fraud reports.
I don't have that number now.
Governor Hutchinson?
Yes, I hear somebody remotely.
Yeah, I'm Elijah Mundy of KJRW 94.5 FM in Eastern Arkansas and KCAT Radio in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and I'm a member of the Arkansas Broadcasters Association. It's my first time doing this. Governor Hutchinson, I know that you have delayed the school starting, and the question that I want to ask you is that because so much is still not known about the coronavirus, there is much confusion, contradiction, and fear in the debate whether or not schools should be open. Now, in some school districts, this is going to be an almost impossible burden to manage, and the financial drain that could also result could be a real problem. That, along with kids coming out of their homes or environment and could have the virus and spread the virus to other kids who would then carry the virus back to their homes, and this could be disastrous. It is my understanding that you as governor has to make that call, and my question is, should you, because of fear of spikes and potential for more spikes, keep all school districts closed until next year, or perhaps you should make it on a school district case-by-case basis?
The answer is no. We should not cancel school for this school year. The kids need school. Everyone needs to have that opportunity for education that's out there, for the interaction even with the extracurricular activities that are so important to our students. So we need to have school this year, absolutely. I'm firm on that. The educators are firm on that. Public health is firm on we need to have school. We postponed it for 2 weeks to make sure that we're ready for it. You indicated there's a lot we don't know about this virus. There's a lot we do know about it. And one thing we do know is that, you can socially distance, you can wear a mask. There's things that you can do to protect others and to avoid that spread. In a school environment is more difficult with young people, but, they can do it. And we're going to continue to learn and improve the safety of school as we go back. And we're going to have, just like, you could make everything you just said, you could make the argument that, well, somebody shouldn't go work in the factory, or they shouldn't work in the meat processing plant because, they could get COVID, they could take it back home. Likewise, you could get it at home and take it back into the factory. These are risks of any time you have movement, and you have movement in school. So it's mitigating against those risks, and that's what we're doing, and we're learning, and we're going to continue to improve that. Right here at the table, yes.
I wanted to ask Dr. Romero, with the increase in ADH testing, was that a result of those high throughput machines coming on, or are we still waiting on those to come online?
You talking about the new machines that we bought?
Yeah, 2 new high throughput machines, I think. Are they online yet?
Yeah, we don't confuse that with the antigen machines that we bought, but the high throughput.
Yes, it is because of the new high throughput machines. We have still others to bring online. So we do believe that our capacity is going to continue to increase. As I said before, for a state of our size, we have a very, very good public health lab with regard to testing.
Do we have updated antigen test numbers so far for August, or?
The answer is no. Those are coming in fax form that has to be manually put into the system, and so we'll be reporting on the antigen test side once a week or once every 2 weeks at a minimum, hopefully once a week. And we're still developing a more electronic system, but we are tracking it. It's just that the reports will not be as regular right now.
Governor Hutchinson, we have already seen with the starting of Major League Baseball, a number of Marlin baseball players have come down with the virus, and this has caused a concern about baseball season. With all of the difficulties of trying to manage containment of the virus, should all high school and college sports, including Razorback football, be canceled for this year? And can you tell me why or why not?
I didn't understand the question. I understand about Major League Baseball. What's your question? Well, no, I mean, we shouldn't cancel school. We shouldn't cancel all the extracurricular activities. As one student athlete said, give us a chance to be successful and have a season. Everybody understands that, we're going to have challenges and there might be games that are canceled. Things can happen, but you don't quit before you have an opportunity to have the season. And that's in reference to the sports side. Obviously, we want to have school as well. Are there any other questions?
Governor, good afternoon. It's Neil Gladner in Hot Springs. I've got a question for you first about the tax collections reported earlier today and what that means to the state economy and how you project going forward because of the impact of unemployment insurance from the feds. And then also for Secretary Preston, if he could clarify on the 90,000 number of unemployment, is that traditional unemployment or is that the traditional and pandemic combined? And if it's, and on the fraud, so it's a three-part question, and I apologize. That much suspected fraud in the pandemic, and I recognize that it's easier for him to understand because the software is newer, but does that give him concern that there's more in traditional unemployment that the older system isn't catching? So a lot of questions, I apologize, wrap them all together.
That is a lot of questions. Let me come back, Neil. In terms of the revenue report, I should have started today's session with that. And of course, I was concerned that July would be a down month, the first month of the fiscal year, and that we would not have the tax collections this month that we had forecast because it looked like everybody had paid their taxes early versus waiting to the new deadline, July 15th. Well, the good news is that we ran a surplus. Our revenues exceeded our forecast, which is really good news as we start the beginning of the fiscal year. That should give us confidence both in terms of our education budget, but also as we look into the next general session of the legislature. So there's a lot of unpredictability nationally, but that revenue picture that we have in Arkansas was very good news for us.
Governor?
Just a moment, Mike.
And Neil, this is Mike Preston again. So to follow up, so the 90,000 is initial claims on traditional unemployment. What the difference there, and obviously I mentioned the new system, it's easier to catch it. On the traditional unemployment insurance, why it's easier for us to catch it as well as opposed to the pandemic unemployment assistance is that businesses, the letter is sent to the business as well as to the employee. So a business who receives a notification that their employee has filed a claim is typically going to notify us immediately if that's not the case. So that's been a kind of a fail-safe for us and a way to help us mitigate that. That doesn't mean it's not happening, and we're appreciative to all those businesses who are notifying us. It's unfortunate they're having to do that and take time out of their day to call or email to go through that process. So that's why we're able to catch some on there. And then it's about an additional 90 to 100,000 who have filed the weekly pandemic unemployment assistance claims as well. And in there, it's harder for us to verify because you don't have the employer that you go back to, because these are self-employed or independent contractors. So it's a self-verification process. That's why we have more catches in place through our new system, that we have to do these checks and balances. And that's why it's taken us more time to do that due diligence.
Governor Mike McNeil at MagnoliaReporter.com. Are there any plans to ramp up incentives for substitute teachers should large numbers of classroom teachers decide they face too much risk of teaching school this semester?
The question is about, is there any plans to ramp up substitute teachers? That's left to the individual school districts. I do expect tomorrow, I've asked Secretary Johnny Key to join us from the Department of Education. We will be talking about a couple additional education issues tomorrow that I think will be informative and helpful to everyone, including the teachers. And so we're continuing to look at that, but that's something that is left to the individual school districts to line up substitutes, and that comes out of their budget. Let's come back here to the table. We had a question, I thought, here at the table.
On the issue of schools, I keep hearing public health officials and experts saying that opening schools should be tied to the level of virus in a particular community. Is that something that you're looking at?
I tell you, they've been terrific up there and supportive, but I hear three different messages from three different doctors in reference to standards for schools. And so these are guidelines that they suggest. You look at the CDC guidelines, they look at 10% positivity rate as a good thing. Everybody's got a different opinion on schools. What they are united about is that these are local decisions that have to be made based upon the circumstances in your state, and that's what we're acting on.
Is there any reason for the real big jump in Pulaski County today, or is that just?
We'll have to dig deeper into that. I look back in previous weeks and time frames. That's not the largest jump, but it is something I noted because it was larger in proportion to some of the other counties. And you saw the graph yesterday that in central Arkansas, it's not on a bad trend, but Pulaski County is one that always has, it seems to be a little bit larger numbers, and we'll look more deeply into that. Did you have anything else on that, Dr. Romero?
No, okay. Sorry about that. And is there anything to sort of explain sort of the real big uptick in debt numbers? Because I believe we're pushing about 60 in the past week, and that seems like a pretty significant jump.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned the lagging indicator, but Dr. Romero did look at the location of some of those.
So make sure I understand the question. The question is the number of increase in deaths. Is that correct? Yeah. So we did look to try to see if we could find a site at which this was coming from. It's actually not. It's distributed fairly evenly around the state. So we're not seeing a big spike in one single area. Again, this is not a good leading delayed indicator, but it still is. Those individuals that are being hospitalized, then the deaths that occur from those. So.
Concerning because it's widespread and you really can't hone in on something specifically.
I think what it points out to is that COVID is community-wide, statewide. And what it's telling us is that we need to mitigate this statewide. It's not just a single issue in one particular county or one region.
Dr. Romero, on that same note, I've noticed from the coroner's reports that it looks like deaths in the Marshallese community look like they're slowing. Is that something that you guys have noticed, and have you noticed a trend in a decrease in infections within the Marshallese community?
Yes, so I can't answer that specifically because I haven't looked at that to that degree, but I'd be happy to do so and inform you later.
Governor Hutchinson?
Yeah, so Dr. Romero is based upon data. The fact that in northwest Arkansas the cases are going down, and the fact that the Marshallese and the other minority populations comprised a large part of those cases when they were going up. I'm hopeful that that is the case, but we'll have to look at that more deeply.
Governor Hutchinson?
Governor Hutchinson, this is Jamie Weiss with 4029 News. Quick question for Dr. Jose Romero. Dr. Romero spoke with educators in a Q&A on Thursday, and he said that students and teachers would have to self-report if they're positive for COVID-19. I was just curious if you could talk about what the role of contact tracers are in preventing spread, because I'm sure there's concerns for teachers and staffs about having to self-report, especially for some of those younger kids that might not show symptoms.
Did you understand that?
I think I did understand. So, and if this answer isn't addressing your question, then please tell me again. So the school will notify the health department of the case The school is being asked to put together a list of individuals that are contacts, and the health department will do the contact tracing. So the contact tracing is not being done by the school, it's still being done by the health department, but we're asking the school to give us a list of those individuals that could have been exposed.
To go off of that, Dr. Romero, you mentioned that teachers and students will have to self-report. Should they be self-reporting if they have symptoms or just if they go to get tested for COVID-19?
Self-report.
Yeah, so by self-reporting, meaning that they would have to, if you're concerned enough to have to be tested, then that isn't a report in itself. You've reported yourself to the health department. We have that information. We will go forward. Within the school, if there is concern that an individual could have COVID, then we would not want them to go to school at that time. And of course, it would be nice if they let the school know about that, so then we could go ahead and follow up on it if necessary. But again, if there's concern about infection, testing is indicated, and we'll make that available through our local health units or other sites.
I think that will do it for today. Thank you, and we will be talking again education and other issues tomorrow. Thank you.
And you have been watching Governor Hutchinson's latest COVID-19 press conference on this, the 146th day that COVID-19 has been a part of our lives and in many cases altering our behavior. He got challenged today, the governor did, by about the opening of schools on August 24th, just 20 days away, especially from one caller who was from Southeast Arkansas, who really challenged him over the phone about what if. The governor is sticking by August 24th as a way to say that also it will allow Arkansas time to see and watch other states who've already opened schools to see how they perform, to see how we might alter our behavior as we point toward August the 24th. The governor also sticking by sports and extracurricular activities, saying that is a part of schooling. So he is not budging from August the 24th and the decision to go ahead with high school sports. On the another side of this is the fraud that has reared its ugly head to the point where even the governor got involved in the fraud with a fictitious letter he got over the weekend. And we wandered off into the weeds at this press conference as to how we're going to fight this fraud and the process involved. One thing that's interesting is that 27,000 Arkansans are on hold before their pandemic unemployment assistance checks arrive, waiting to solve the fraud. 20,000 unemployment claims on hold until we solve the fraud problem. That is very real. Just about the biggest, most positive thing that comes out of this is that there were 784 new cases. That's not positive, but 760 recovered from COVID-19. So it's almost equaling out. If you're looking for a bright spot, that might be the only one that comes from this involved press conference today where the details were over processed. We will have so much more at 5, 6, and 10 to make sense of what you've just heard. Let's get back to making a deal on THV 11. Thanks for watching.